My reading this morning is from a book titled The Gift of Faith by Jean Nuar. She wrote, "Whether we wish it so or not, our children are religious, spiritual beings. From within their own magical selves, they know feelings, intuitions, and impulses. From the people's stories, songs, and media of their environs, they hear religious words and messages and see religious symbols and images. From the experience of their daily living, they encounter religious events. They see dry sticks sprout pulsing green leaves. They see the deer killed in the highway. They watch their teacher's tummy grow round with new life and bid farewell to their uncle dying of AIDS. From the demands of their living and growing in the world, they face situations that require from them a religious decision, response, or interpretation. We cannot choose whether they will be religious, but we can choose how and to what extent we will instill support, guide, and celebrate this dimension of their nature. Children are deeply religious beings on every level. Intellectually, they think and conceptualize on matters of good and evil, of God and prayer, of life and death. Emotionally, they feel deep compassion and empathy, as well as unbounded hope and deep despair. Spiritually, they enjoy a sense of awe and wonder that far exceeds our adult possibilities. They have insights of transcendence, even mystical experiences. Behaviorally, they live out kindness and cruelty, generosity and selfishness, forgiveness and condemnation. Children can know things with such certainty. Unless we are careful and proactive in hearing their thoughts, responding to them and sharing our own, unless we surround them with stories, songs, and other messages that carry positive images, the notions they develop may be damaging ones." My sister, when she was very young, referred to Geppetto's puppet son as Pinocchio-nose. She had this gift for combining the obvious with the subtle. And from that day forward, this is how the entire family referred to the story and its hero. Now, my mother, if she suspected any of us were less than truthful, would not reprimand or recriminate. She would simply lean forward and touch the offending child's nose. We understood it as the ultimate test for truth. And without further encouragement, we would amend any original statement that smacked of untruth to bring it into compliance with fact or the family line. In this way did I learn about the importance of telling the truth. I've tried to remember what I believed about truth while I was growing up. I was told in my family that it was desirable. I was assured that lying was unforgivable. In school, truth-telling was similarly encouraged. Trustworthiness, they told us, was a test of goodness and character and came from telling the truth with consistency. I think I was convinced that truth had an obvious physical manifestation, a soft nose, a serene face, an aura of trustworthiness, and that lying was noticeable and inescapably testable. Now, a recent survey of some 3,700 youths aged 11 to 18 discovered that in the previous 3 months, 2 out of every 3 of them had lied to a parent, a teacher, or another adult. 6 out of 10 had lied to their peers, a slightly better showing. 1 in 3 had cheated on an exam. These children were, according to the pollsters, not into promiscuity, drug abuse, or violence. They were kids in your church, the kids on your street, the kids in your home and mine. I don't think I cheated on exams, not out of any virtue, but because I didn't need to. I was good at exams. But did I lie to my peers? Oh my, yes. I told them whatever they wanted to hear so that they would like me. Did I lie to my parents or my teachers? Only when I needed to protect myself, or if I thought I could get away with it. In spite of my deep shyness and desire to conform, I think I was pretty normal. Truth is considered a virtue in our society, intellectually if not in reality. But lying is not one of the litany of sins. It seems that the topic is more complicated than that. Lying is not necessarily the opposite of truth either, or at least not its only opposite. Truth, they say, can be taught and therefore learned, but it does not seem to be innate. The tests for truth, it turns out, are not as infallible as touching the nose or reading a polygraph. In spite of the social call to honesty, many people achieve great success and rewards in spite of their lack of truth-telling. As Unitarian Universalists, we seem to find truth of value. Our principles say that we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But that is something different from telling the truth. Truth-telling is implied, however, in the principles that speak of human worth and dignity, justice and equity, the right of conscience, and of world peace. A song that was popular at one time said, "The world is sustained by 3 things: truth, justice, and peace." I believe in truth-telling as an adult more than I did as a child. That is, I believe in telling the truth out of an internal urgency rather than out of a fear of getting caught in a lie. I've learned for myself that truthing is more satisfying to me than lying. Yet, to tell you the truth, I lie to myself. I find that is the easiest lie to tell, that all is well, that I'm on the right course, that nothing bothers me, that I'm perfect just as I am. But when these self-lies are uncovered, I've found there is usually an opportunity for growth. So I do not worry overly much about self-lying, for it seems to be discovered eventually, and I take comfort in knowing that I have more growing to do. The change in attitude about truth, then, seems to be a process, a part of the life journey, and not a simple garment that you put on in childhood and wear for the rest of your life. From that, I conclude that it has deep religious significance. All the indicators of faith have in common the apparent need for truth-telling, for continual self-learning, and for growing. So I want to begin by exploring how we learn about truth-telling and what we teach the next generations. A recent news service article addressed these issues, including the survey from which I've already quoted. The article focused on the need for us to teach truth-telling to our children and to reinforce these teachings regularly. Truthfulness doesn't come naturally, the author wrote. From the time we're old enough to get ourselves in trouble or realize others aren't always pleased by the unvarnished truth, we're tempted to bend the facts, to omit information, or just outright lie to protect ourselves. The problem about truth-telling is not so much an issue of goodness, but the ease in which we are able to get away with it. Children are painfully honest up to a certain age. What precocious 2-year-old hasn't embarrassed her parents by telling a guest, "You smell funny," or "My mother said you aren't a very nice person"? When we tell them you mustn't say things like that, we are setting the stage for omitting the truth, or telling it on a bias for our own advantage. No wonder honesty is not practiced more often. It's a difficult thing to define, and there are social expectations. Felipe Fernandez Armesto, in the foreword of his book Truth, A History and Guide for the Perplexed, speaks about the Santa Claus problem. When we admit to our children, he claims, that Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy are fabrications, we lose a little bit of their trust or encourage them to make up stories to further their own needs. Yet a life without fantasy and imagination would be dull indeed. So along with truthing, we must also teach them imagining and the ability to discern the difference between the two. In addition to the Santa Claus problem is the child's ability to detect the difference in what we say and what they see us do. If we teach one thing and practice another, believe me, they will notice. They might even call it to our attention. In addition, there are socially acceptable lies, many of them centered around money or self-esteem, and we all learn sooner or later what we can get away with. Is it cheating on our taxes, borrowing office supplies, not mentioning the cashier's error when it's in our favor? Is it exaggerating our qualities on our resume or in our personal ads, not admitting our ignorance, avoiding conflict or confrontation, or ignoring our feelings? All of these embody a form of truthlessness. And we learn about truth-telling and truth-altering from the clay feet of our favorite heroes. A recent study of U.S. presidents by psychologists Stephen Rubenzer and Thomas Fashionbauer evaluated U.S. presidents' personalities during the 5 years before they took office. And they rate the presidents as, quote, far less straightforward than typical citizens, scoring in the 15th percentile for honesty. They said the best performers among the presidents were judged as less than honest. The study concludes, a pleasant, truthful president simply couldn't cut it. That's just one example of what we see before us every day. Issues around religious doctrine parading as truth are particularly difficult for Unitarian Universalist adults and children. What we believe often cannot be proven. Does that make it false? Can we pass on our beliefs as truth to the next generation? Should we just say nothing and let them figure it out for themselves? Or do we give them something to believe in until their own values are more mature? The latter, insists Fernando Armesto. He said, when people stop believing in something, they do not believe in nothing. They believe in anything. So not providing truth stones to our children is to leave them open to any crackpot ideal that appeals to them in the moment. If we cannot teach them absolute truth, we must at least teach them the value of truthing. Jacob Bronowski, in speaking of truth from a scientist's point of view in a series of lectures that later became his book, The Origins of Knowledge and Imagination, says our values derive from truth. There are personal values, he said, including respect, sensitivity, and tolerance. There are the is values, the values of a person working alone. And then there are the communal values, the ought values, honesty, integrity, dignity, authenticity, which bind the community together. So truth is not just important for the individual. It's important for community, for relationships, for any kind of interacting with one another. Truth, like good manners, makes the work of community and relationship run more smoothly. When truth is present, there is less chance for misunderstanding, confusion, or conflict. When truth is present, there is more room for trust. When truth is present, there is a feeling of security and peacefulness. These are well worth the work of pursuing truth. Truth-telling then has consequences, not only for ourselves, but for the others who observe us, who learn from us, who model themselves after us. As role models for the next generations, it behooves us then to study truth, to determine its consequences, to give voice to feelings, to promote a healthy attitude where truth can be received, and to value truth and the virtues that derive from it. I said earlier that I believe in truth more now as a mature adult than I did as a child, and by that I mean I've consciously compared the benefits of not telling the truth, of getting away with something, of setting myself up as more than I am, with the benefits of honest relationships and trust. I am still subject to denial, but even the discomfort of discovering that is far outweighed by the relief of new truths, the laying down of stone truths and the picking up of relatively weightless inner truths. Spiritual work must include truth-telling and truth-seeking in order to be beneficial. Outer truth-telling requires prior inner work and is reflected in the whole person. Everyone's attempt to be good, every attempt to construct happy relationships and thriving societies, wrote Fernando Armesto, starts with two questions. How do I tell right from wrong? And how do I tell truth from falsehood? He said there is no social order without trust, and no trust without truth, or at least without agreed truth-finding procedures. So, truth-finding procedures, what would that look like? Perhaps like personal investigation of the truth, like not allowing others to dictate our thinking, like not giving into prejudice or making judgments on incomplete information. Yes, to all of these. Yes, to truth-finding as including justice and peace. Yes, to the idea the world is sustained by three things: by truth, by justice, and by peace. But remember, it is sustained, not driven. It is sustained, not created. Sustained, nourished, embraced, kept safe. So let us agree to sustain the world with our truths and with the telling of them. Let us build barricades to hurt and misunderstanding with the stones of our truth. Let us be honest and trustworthy with one another and live the life we would want for those who follow after us.